Hi, Zizaran here with another video, and I just tried the druid, and I'll make a video about everything about the druid, but the druid started pointing out some problems in Diablo 4 that wasn't as apparent with a lot of the other classes, and especially with the new information, legendaries are increased drop rate for the beta. So that means that you will not be decked out in full legendaries by 25, and that pretty much changes everything. Because that means that it's going to make a lot bigger difference when you actually get them. But with that in mind, I was playing, and first off, resource generation on Druid and Barb is really bad. It's also extremely weird on Druid how you can hit like debris, barrels, and stuff like that, and suddenly you're gaining resources. But you're not gaining resources by regenerating. But hitting a barrel is okay. Or a deer. You're a Druid, and you can kill a deer to get some more resources. Very Druid-like. Obviously, the last one is more of a joke, but resource generation felt really weird. And I've gone into Diablo 4, and with everything they're saying, they are aiming for a more casual audience. They've said that the skill tree is very on purpose to be more simple because they wanted to be an easy game to get into. But here's where I start having a problem. That's all well and good, but there's several things in the game that is not catered to more casual players. There's a few things that are really big issues. The first off, the resource generation and cooldown. Either is fine, but they do such a big combination of both, and it really sets apart skills that don't have either. For example, Corpse Explosion I think is done really well. It has no cooldown, no resource cost, and the only limitation, which ends up being the resource cost, is corpses being there, which you have a lot of different ways to generate. So Corpse Explosion ends up being really good and sets itself apart so much. Now you have a lot of other skills that some have insane cooldowns, some have cooldowns and resource costs. There's this like insane amount of either something has a crazy long cooldown or it's so extremely cost that you can only cast it 2 or 3 times. We do see that we have things on items like resource cost reduction, etc. It does feel a little bit extreme early. Obviously, I can't speak about the endgame. This is only level 25. The reason I want to make this video is that I hope by giving feedback, and if a lot of people talk about it, that they'll be like, okay, this is definitely something that isn't in the endgame. We don't have to worry about it from Blizzard's point of view. Like, this doesn't become a problem later, and then that's all fine, right? Then all my complaints are irrelevant. Or that they're like, man, that is a really good point. If people are feeling like this at level 25, and they know that it doesn't get better in the endgame, then they maybe should think about doing something. Because the main important thing is that people have fun and that the game is accessible and easy for the majority of people. And the fact that Barb not only doesn't regenerate its resource, but it degenerates it. Which, if you've been out of combat a few seconds, you start losing your rage. That feels really bad. So Barb and Druid just has awful resource generation. Another thing, this is just straight up anti-casual. The respec cost. So the respec cost goes up the more you do it, but it goes up permanently. Apparently this is intentional, where they have said that at some point they want people to make a new character instead of be respecing permanently. That is okay and all well and good as a philosophy, but I don't think it goes very well over with a more casual audience, where generally, especially more casual players, aren't even on Twitch, they aren't on YouTube, they aren't checking build guides, and they want to experiment and play around with different things. At least like on a basic level. Like, I'm not talking about making advanced builds here. I'm just saying, what is that ability like? What is that ability like? And this really prevents that when eventually your gold cost will become so big that you have to make a new character and never goes down. Somebody said that it'll go down between seasons, but obviously that is only a thing for the people that are playing non-laddered. If you are respecing a lot in a season on an active character, you will at some point just, okay, well now it's 1.2 million gold to respec one node, it's time to make a new character. So I definitely prefer Last Epoch's respec system there being incredibly new player friendly, and you can respec at any time with no cost, and you just have to very quickly level back the skill up, and that goes very fast. It just seems a little bit at odds with making a more simple casual game. A lot of the characters early aren't, especially with legendaries being increased drop rate, going to really give the same power fancy that I think a lot of people are expecting. there is such a large percentage that love Diablo 3 for this. Now, Diablo 3 is my least favorite ARPG because it tells you what to play, it's incredibly easy, and it is just the entire power fancy of just right-clicking down monsters. But there are so many people that love that, and a lot of people want Diablo 4 to be that. They don't necessarily want it to be a struggle. They don't want low pack size, like the density we saw, and obviously I can't talk about leaked content, but we have seen some of that too. It doesn't look great for the power fancy of just mowing down monsters. A lot of what we've seen, it's a lot more like specific and more thought out, like, okay, this zone has some monsters, but now you're not seeing a monster for like a minute or so. And that also seems a little bit at odds to me. So while there's a lot of things that I'm like, yeah, this is very clearly designed for more simplistic play or more casual players, there are some things that just seems incredibly at odds at it. So by sort of being like dancing between these lines, and not necessarily in a good way, I'm just wondering, who will Diablo 4 end up being for? I want games to be very, very different from each other. It's cool if they take some things, I don't mind that. But I want Last Epoch, Diablo 4, and Path of Exile to be very strong identities and very different so that people have more choice. And I was expecting it to be Diablo 4 will be the most casual one for casual players, very easy, gives you the power fancy, gives you the hack and slash. And then you have Last Epoch somewhere in the middle, and you have Path of Exile for the people that, you know, you shut out the light, you really sit there for 16 hours calculating out your build, and you really want that complexity, you want that insane endgame, etc. And having the choice between those three would be so great, but I'm starting to wonder, is that going to be Diablo 4? Honestly, it's just something we're going to have to wait and see. I just want to make this video, get people talking about it a little bit. What do you think? Do you think I'm onto something? Do you think I'm stupid? Keep in mind, this is only a level 25 beta, and we don't have the full game. I've never had access to the endgame beta or anything, so I know nothing about it, aside from leaks that we're seeing on Reddit and stuff. One thing that's so scary to me about the legendary items with the reduced drop rate, it basically becomes the problem I have with sets, at least. Well, there aren't sets because it is one item. The problem I have with sets is that it homogenizes gear and tells you what skill to play in Diablo 3. But it definitely will end up telling you what skill to play. So I would rather like to see that either it has an impact on multiple skills or multiple things. I would love to see the removal of the damage increase, because just changing something in a neat way is already, or should already be, the exciting part of the legendary. When it both affects the way it plays and not in a negative way and triples your damage, then it kind of ends up being a no-brainer. Now, hopefully at the end game, when we do have a lot of legendaries, you end up the choice between a lot of these different skills. But I am a little bit worried about seeing in this early 25 demo that some skills are so much ahead of others, regardless of even having legendaries. As soon as you unlock Chain Lightning, Fireball, Frozen Orb, Chain Lightning is just miles ahead of everything else by default. Another thing that is very dated and I hope gets fixed before launch of Diablo 4 is the dungeon design. Obviously, a lot of the bosses are just reused. So if you're jumping between several dungeons, sometimes you'll just see the exact same boss that you just fought. That's pretty lame. A lot of the designs of the dungeons themselves are very like tedious and mazy and not necessarily fun to go through. But the number one thing that is really bad is there are some dungeons that you have to kill every single monster down to the last one in an area before you're able to progress. And sometimes on top of this, that also has that you need to pick up every single essence that monster drops. These are like super outdated concepts from the year 2000 that generally nearly every other ARPG is solved by having, well, you only need to kill 90% and then you can progress. Or if it is kill everything, it's a very, very linear zone where you're very unlikely to actually have to go back. So very, very weird concepts that I hope get fixed between now and launch. Another thing that ends up being really frustrating is obviously the level scaling. I've talked about this a lot in previous videos, but it also became a lot more noticeable on the Druid. And one thing that I really felt is destroying the game for me is every single time I level up, my character becomes weaker and not stronger. This is basically super reverse of any other ARPG. You only feel stronger when you get a huge power spike in item or you unlock some sort of big combo. Other than that, you actively feel punished, and not in a small way, you feel it every single level that you are getting punished whenever you level up. And that is very rough. A lot of the other classes were so overpowered in comparison to the Druid that you don't feel it as much, but on Druid, it feels even worse than what Oblivion felt like. An important thing to remember, even if they don't nail it at launch, they have said that they are going to be doing beefy league updates. And every time I talk about that on stream, people sadly say copium, but you do have to remember Blizzard is very a for-profit company, and we see very clear reasons for why they themselves would have a big reason to make sure that the seasons are beefy. That is why I feel that it's a lot less copium. They're gonna be selling cosmetics. They're gonna be selling the battle pass. Whereas like previous things like Diablo 3, they would just have to hope that new players are buying the game. So they're a lot less incentivized to actually have big updates outside of expansions, which is no longer the case. So yeah, I do think that there is a good chance that we will get beefy updates because of the financial incentive. Either way, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts below. This is just some of the big concerns I have. So obviously this ends up being a little bit of a, well, it can probably come off as a negative video, but hopefully understand where I'm coming from. And I really want the game to do well and be a great game, especially for casual players. So thanks for watching. Sub if you liked the video, but more importantly, try to die less than I do.